It's important to pre-wet your paper properly, which means the edges, and to basically push in the water, brush in the water a couple of times. So I've pre-mixed a few colours just to get this wet and wet exercise going. And it's no sketching exercise where we just start and we use the qualities of our pigments working together with the water. And I'm using these channels that the water creates because the paper buckles. I might just give this one a miss on this side. So I've started off with a fairly neutral colour, a slight grey, and I will introduce more intense hues, colours. So I'm going to introduce a straightforward phthalo blue. And let's bring that down a bit. I'm going to go for some straightforward black. And I'm interested to find out what happens when I put in a split complementary. So a pyrrole orange straight out of my palette. So the majority, the analogous colours are blues, and the split complementary is this orange. And the idea is to let the pigments and the water do all the work for you. So you're basically just directing it a little bit, but to such an extent that you are not in control, but you collaborate with the watercolour. So it's really about observing how wet your paper is, when you need to step in, when you need to let things rest. I love the orange. I'm going to add a touch more because it sort of blends on paper and they become neutral when you mix complementaries. They form a neutral tone, like either a grey or a browny colour. Maybe there's some time to lift off. You can see I'm constantly swapping brushes, so I have full control. So I just want to create a bit of a light accent here. Rinse again. And a bit of light accent here, and I'll scoop it up like that. The pressure you apply with your brush is important, because the harder you press, the more paint you lift off. If you just apply very little pressure, you sometimes even drop in colours. I want to create a bit of a highlight here. And a bit more here. So I'd love that orange in here. I'm hoping that will stay. So I want to introduce a little bit more on this side too. So straight into my orange. And I'm dropping in gently. I love a bit of cerulean. See if I can get a bit of strength in my cerulean. Which is it's a beautiful color, cerulean. It's a must-have, you know, for me in my palette. So looking at everything, I just want a bit more strength down the bottom. So let's be brave. Strengthen this puddle. And let's go and fill it in. Here we go. So again, there's no real plan. The whole process is just one thing leads to another. And observing what happens and stepping in when needed. My sky is getting a little bit pale up the top, so I'm just observing, and when it's nearly dry I'll wash in a little bit more grey. So in terms of the colours I've only used the phthalo blue, a black, the paro orange and a bit of cerulean blue now, so not that many colours at all. The importance of a minimal colour palette, you know, people underestimate sometimes. Okay, so now it's basically fine-tuning and observing where I can make some changes, but otherwise let pigments do all the work for me. Just some general table styles. You know, I'm not really a huge fan, but sometimes you can create really lovely surfaces. So when you use salt, don't use too much of it, just a little sprinkle here and there. I also love working in with a knife to create lines. I'm just following my composition. So I'm basically scraping in wet washes, which will sort of create a dark line because the pigments drop into the little scratch that I make into the paper. Any sort of sharp objects will create this effect. Just gonna create a little bit more drama in the sky. And now I think it's time to just let it dry. So while it's drying, I usually put it down flat again. Just going to lift off a little bit of color here, because I don't want too much. I want to keep this nice and light. Same here. So with lifting off, give it time. Up with the brush rather than with a paper towel, which will create a certain effect.